Welcome to everyone. Thanks, Julian. So hello and welcome to everyone who's joining from home. This is the launch of the Planetary Health Meal Plan, the long-awaited meal plan. My name is Tina and I'm the Dundee student lead for the project, and we'll be hosting tonight along with my colleague Julian, who's our Edinburgh student lead. We're really excited for everyone to be joining, and hopefully it'll be a really fun, inspiring evening. We've got fantastic people joining tonight. Just some housekeeping. So we've actually started the recording already. This will be posted on our website for people who want to watch it again or want to just catch up for the first time. I'm just going to run through a bit of the schedule for tonight. So first of all, we're just going to hear from a very inspiring woman, Sarah Bridal, who's an author and advocate for sustainable food choices. As well as we'll be hearing from our colleague from My Emissions, Matthew Isaacs. So they've calculated all the carbon footprint for our recipes. So we'll be hearing a little bit about how they did those calculations and what we can take from the labels in the meal plan. Throughout this event, there'll be opportunities for questions. And at 6:40, we're going to hand over to Kirsty Hay from Edinburgh Food Social, who will be going through a turmeric chickpea stew with us. So if you're joining from home, this is the chance to cook along with her. Some of our senior university staff will be filmed also doing the cook along, sharing their tips and their inspiring stories from all of this. So basically a little bit of a background to Nutrition Revolution and who we are. So we're a group of students and staff from Dundee and Edinburgh universities. And we came together in January of this year, really compelled by the EAT Lancet report, which was published in 2019 and set forth a set of guidelines for how we can eat better for our health and the health of the planet. Knowing that we are in the midst of a global syndemic, which is a pandemic of undernutrition, obesity, and climate change, and which is threatening the natural resources that we depend on for life. So we were compelled by this truth and the fact that it's impossible to achieve our sustainable development goals without transforming our food systems. So we came together and had to think about what we could do to make this to make some movements and some steps in the right direction. We understood that students are a hugely influential group that can really inspire and create change. And thinking back to the Lancet guidelines, we thought what a way to make this change would be to make it easy, affordable, and fun for students to eat a diet that's aligned with these guidelines. So we decided to create the meal plan, which has low carbon and nutritious meals over the course of a month, and that people can join into. So we're hoping that this meal plan will be taken up by students. People will get on board with it. People will have fun with it and be quite creative and flexible with it as well. We really want to hear all the feedback from it. So we're excited tonight to launch it. I'm going to hand over to my colleague Julian to talk a little bit about what we kind of aim to get out of the meal plan, and to go on further from there. So over to you, Julian.
Oh, thanks for the nice intro. So with this in mind, we partnered up with a lot of bodies from the Edinburgh University Catering all the way to Deuce or over in Dundee, all to have this meal plan ready for today. It's been a process that's taken around 9 months now, and it feels so good that we can finally launch it. And we really had 5 main aims with this. The first one was just to encourage a healthier student community and one that was aware of seasonal eating and its importance to the environment. Our next aim was also to make people more conscious of their general carbon footprinting, make them aware of the different tools that were out there, and to ensure that we were mindful of the way we were eating. Thirdly, and one that might be relevant to all of us, maybe me and especially, is we also wanted to teach people new cooking skills, to have them have recipes that will be on the standard 3 or 4 that they cook, or beyond the fast food that a lot of students are exposed to over Welcome Week. Case in point with a lot of the dominos being advertised during this time. And fourthly, we have created strong links with a number of partners, both within Dundee and Edinburgh. And these partners could be your local store just outside. And we wanted to encourage people to more actively buy from them and improve the microeconomy around us. And hopefully our main aim is to just stimulate long-term behavioral change of this project, to have people within our community more aware of the way they eat and how they eat affects both themselves and the environment, as well as the economy in general. And with that, I think we're going to transition into our first talk. I'm excited to say that we've got Sarah Bridal, who's a professor of food, climate, and society at the University of York, and who is someone who is driven by the need for us to tackle climate change. Her research focuses on a quantitative approach to help transform food systems and steward change to new kinds of future. She also has a unique kind of expertise that is in research, as well as interpreting large data sets and statistical methods on food and astrophysics, which I find interesting. Sarah leads Take a Bite out of climate change, providing resources to help us understand the impacts of climate change. And she also has a book called Food and Climate, she also has a book on food and climate called Without the Hot Air, which was published quite recently, 2020. So we do encourage everyone to have a read. Otherwise, now I'll just transition to Sarah, and please do give us a brief intro and tell us about how your work intersects with astrophysics.
Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you so much for inviting me, and I'm really excited to hear all the amazing things that you guys are doing, and the fact that you've got all these people, all you people who've joined this call and who are watching this online later. A really great job of getting this important message out there. I'm not totally sure the sort of level of expertise on this call compared to the talks that I normally give. So I'm gonna keep an eye on the chat for any questions. I'm gonna do some poll questions, quiz questions, but maybe that will stimulate a different kind of question from you compared to the sort of lay audience that I'm normally speaking to. And so don't hesitate to come with the questions, and I'll ignore all the ones I can't answer. I mean, I'll scroll through and pick out the ones that I feel are sort of most commonly asked if there's too many. So don't hold back. But just to answer your question first of all about the background. So I guess, hold on, I'm not in the right window here. Here we go. So I guess for most of the last 20 years, I've been giving talks which start with this slide, which is about learning about dark matter in the universe. I included working with several colleagues in Edinburgh who are experts in this field. Basically 5 years ago, I had a sort of we finished a big project, which was very satisfying. My kids started at school, and I started to think about the next 20 years of my career, and really starting to think I am not comfortable carrying on looking at the sky when we've got climate change going on our own planet. There's an app here, you can gravitationally lens your friends and your enemies if you're interested. So we basically published the largest ever contiguous dark map of dark matter, which is extremely fun and satisfying. But my kids were sort of, just thinking about them asking me in 20 years' time, what did you do about climate change, mummy? And me saying, I looked at the stars and just thinking, I can't carry on living like this. I need to do something else as well. So I started to learn about climate change really for the first time. I'm not somebody who was an eco-warrior ever before in my life, much more interested in astrophysics, but started to learn about climate change and the impact of food on climate change. And I find these climate stripes are pretty handy when you're giving talks. In fact, you can even get the bag and then drop climate change into any conversation. Basically, in case you're not already aware, this is showing the average temperature each year since 1850. And so the fact it's redder on one side and bluer on the other is showing that there is some sort of warming. And this was actually done by Ed Hawkins, who I remember doing his PhD in astrophysics back 15, 20 years ago, now a leading climate scientist. I don't need to explain the greenhouse effect to you guys, I'm sure. But yeah, as you know, we've got this CO2 concentration going up, but we've also got other gases that are causing climate change. And the majority, I won't go through all the details on this slide, but the majority of the contributions to climate change from the food system are actually methane and nitrous oxide. And so that means that with food causing 1/4 to 1/3 of all climate change at the moment, if we were to stop burning fossil fuels, we would get rid of most of this green part of the chart, and food would be the biggest contributor to climate change. So that means that hopefully, as we stop burning fossil fuels, then food will be the most important thing in 10 years' time in terms of reducing our impact on the temperature and extreme weather events and so on. On the other hand, as I'm sure you're all aware, if we don't stop burning fossil fuels, then food will be the thing that's probably, in terms of our lives and maybe around the world, the way that we're most affected by climate change. So whichever way things work out, food, I think, is the most fascinating and important topic when it comes to climate change, given that hopefully there are lots of people doing lots about fossil fuels already. And that's why I chose to focus on food. And so, yeah, this 1/4 of all climate change coming from food, 1/4 to 1/3, that's coming from a range of different factors: cutting down trees to clear land for agriculture, growing crops with nitrous oxide fertilizer on the ground, raising animals and methane from animals, manure and burps and so on, food processing, manufacturing, transport, packaging, cooking, and also food waste. So there's been many reports, and as you mentioned, the EAT Lancet Planetary Health Diet, which really raised the profile of this issue and gave us some more concrete recommendations to work on. And I guess my point of view, and I was at various food meetings over the last 5 years, which said, well, who has the power here? Is it the supermarkets? Is it the policymakers? Is it the public? Is it governments? Is it food producers? And I guess I 5 years ago was completely a layperson on this, and I kind of concluded that it's really lay people, the citizens, who have the most power. And I really think that's been demonstrated over the last 5 years with plastics. You see what a change has happened over the last 5 years, that people are now demanding change on plastics, and food producers, supermarkets, governments are proud and showing off their policies on reducing plastics. And I'd love to see that same kind of enthusiasm for policy change to be about the impacts of food on climate change. So that's another sort of step change that I'd love to see. And so, inspired by my former mentor, David Mackay, who wrote this brilliant book, Sustainable Energy Without the Hot Air, which I thoroughly recommend, about renewables, I thought the best thing to do was to write a book, which I felt what I wanted to read, actually, but because I couldn't find it, I ended up writing a book about how different foods contribute to climate change. And just to start off, though, to get things into perspective, if we drive a car 12 miles, somewhere 12 miles away and home again, that causes about the same amount of climate change as one person eating food for 1 day on a global average. And so that's about 6 kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalent. So I could lift 6 kilograms, but it's relatively heavy. And that fills about 200 party balloons effectively of carbon dioxide per person per day from producing that food mostly. We compare that to a transatlantic flight. If we divide one return transatlantic flight divided by 365 days of the year, so if we do one transatlantic flight per year, basically, we're causing slightly more climate change than our food. So it's important, I think, to get these things into perspective, but food is still quite a significant thing. So if we want to halve our food impacts, then we maybe need to get down to about 3 kilograms. And I'm going to show this grey bar on the remaining charts to compare with. So here we look at something like steak and baked beans. I'm not going to poll you on this. You can probably guess which causes most climate change out of a steak and chips or beans and potato. But how different do you think those are? So how many more times climate change, climate impact do you think the steak and chips might have compared to the beans and potato? So you can stick your numbers in the chat if you like, or ask any questions. So how different do you think those two things are? What factor difference do you think there might be? Different. I don't normally ask this question, but since you're quite a literate audience, I'm asking it. I can see you look keen there. Gosh, answers coming in already. Brilliant. Excellent. Okay, fantastic. We've got a few different answers. We've got 4, 5, 5, 15, 10, 15. Brilliant. Okay, great. So the answer for a average European steak and chips is about 20 times, but that does depend on where the beef comes from. So for the UK, according to some sources, it's only about 10 times, but for global average, it would be 100 times. So it really depends on where that beef comes from, but whatever happens, it's 10 times or more. So there's a much bigger difference between these different foods than a lot of people think. And I think that's really positive because it means that actually we can do something, right? If all foods contributed about the same to climate change, they would be stuck because we need to eat. But the fact there are big differences, huge differences really, more than a factor of 10, means that we can do something about this, even just by looking at quantities of that steak, for example. Okay, which do you think causes the most climate change? A bowl of cereal, a large latte, or 2 boiled eggs? Answers in the chat. Or questions, if you've got questions about that. Good to have a range here, great, excellent. Okay, we do have a bit of a range here, yeah. Okay, so we've got cereal, latte, eggs, a few votes for each. Probably the latte is edging it, but the cereal might be taking a late lead there. So it really depends on how much milk there is actually. And that's the one thing I didn't actually tell you. So if you have lots of milk on your cereal, if you had more milk in the cereal than in the latte, it would be the bowl of cereal. But in this example here, I've done a standard sort of 200 ml amount of milk on the cereal and about 500 ml, that's a pint of milk, in a large latte that you would get in a coffee shop, for example. So yeah, that's really coming down to the amount of milk. I have put the packaging, the plastic bottle for the milk on that chart. You can't really see it because it's so small. So any questions about that, do ask me about that. I'm going to rattle on with another poll question now just to stimulate any questions. Which do you think causes the most climate change out of a ham sandwich, a lettuce salad, or a pot of yogurt? A bit more pause on this one. I think everyone's thinking about it. I'm not judging you on your answers, by the way. I'm just trying to stimulate questions. I think this is looking fair. Oh, I was going to say unanimous, but no, great. Good, we've got a bit of variety there. Excellent. So again, it probably comes down to quantities, which I haven't told you, but in this sandwich, I put about 50 grams of ham. So that's 2 standard slices if you get pre-sliced ham. And I've done a sort of standard sized yogurt. So that, I mean, if you had a massive yogurt, it would be bigger. So it does depend a bit on the quantities. And you can see these are all relatively, small compared to this average daily budget on the right-hand side. Okay, snacks. So a small bar of chocolate, 25 grams of chocolate, a small regular sized packet of crisps, a banana, or an apple. Lots to think about here. Feel free to ask questions now or later as well. Great question about land use change there. Yeah, so land use change is included. Great, I think we got a unanimous go for the chocolate here, so I'll reveal all. So all these charts are on the same scale. And so the main takeaway for me about this is that this is, these are all quite small compared to the average daily budget. But the chocolate does edge it, so well done for everybody who said chocolate, which is everybody who replied there. Quite a comment there about apple and banana eaten seasonally. So that apple actually, I've assumed the banana has come all the way halfway across the world by boat, but even then it still doesn't really figure on this. And those of you who are fans of Mike Berners-Lee's book, How Bad Are Bananas, will already know that. I don't want to spoil the book for you, but basically bananas are not that bad in terms of climate impacts anyway. Great, and then final quiz before I wrap up for your questions. Which do you think causes the most climate change? Spaghetti bolognese, chicken curry and rice, or fish and chips? Cool. Okay, I think we're going to get a clear winner here. Yeah, very good. Great. So if we look at the sizes here, basically all of these are relatively large compared to our average daily budget. I'd love to see some calculations for your, well, we could compare in fact with those calculations for your fabulous menu of diets. But you can see these are all relatively large compared to the average, and the beef in the spaghetti bolognese is edging that out there, about 125 grams of beef in that, assuming it's good quality beef. Great. And just obsessively, loads of charts like this, which I got into right in the book, but there is a free version. It's a free ebook thanks to funding from Manchester University. So I'm much more interested in getting the message out there. And the best questions are about the fact that there's a range in these numbers, but I won't go into all of that. I'm just going to quickly advertise some free resources that you can use that we developed for the Take a Bite Out of Climate Change project, joint with Alana Pikowski, who's on the call here. And one of those is this game where you can get your friends playing this game, which asks you to pick the lowest, then the next lowest, then the highest climate impact food. And that's a great way we find at science festivals, for example, to get people engaged. And these are some flashcards which we made, which get you can do sort of top trumps kind of things on them. There's 72 of them in total. You can download them, print them for free, and get people engaged in this topic. And you can get all the original literature and sources on this slide here. But I'm just going to wrap up now so that we can have time for some questions. And if you want to sign up to our mailing list for very infrequent updates on any new resources, then you can do that on our website. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That was super, super interesting. And I'm sure people will be having lots of questions to direct your way. So what I would just say is that if anyone has anything that they want to ask, pop it in the chat, or you can just raise a hand and we'll let you speak on the chat. But that was absolutely fascinating. And I think just to kind of kick us off, I was wondering, so having had some conversations with my own friends about kind of why we're doing the project and trying to encourage people to eat more sustainably, what are your top tips for like encouraging others and kind of really encouraging them that it is easy to do and that these kind of swaps can be done? Do you point out these kind of like big differences in meat like carbon emissions and veg carbon emissions, or how do you kind of go about these conversations?
Well, I think the first thing to get across is that it's just a really important issue. So I definitely think that thing about food being the biggest thing when it comes to climate change after fossil fuels is a really the way that I would start off with this. My approach tends to be not prescriptive at all about what people actually eat, but to talk about how can we, reduce our climate impacts of our food. Having got obsessed with the numbers and everything, I recognise that's not everyone's cup of tea. And I think probably the most important thing is to raise awareness of the issue and the need for policy change to address it, rather than necessarily, trying to convert everybody's individual diets. So, just like something with the sugar tax, for example, what we find with obesity research is that telling people what to eat doesn't necessarily change what they eat, but actually telling people that they need to eat less sugar makes them more receptive to the idea of something like a sugar tax. And so the National Food Strategy, for example, recently that came out, that mentioned a meat tax. It said it didn't recommend a meat tax because it would be too unpopular. Well, maybe we need to fix this kind of a thing. Maybe it's not a meat tax, but a climate tax. I don't know. Has my university adopted a planetary health meal service in canteens? Any advice for institutions? So I've just, as of about 3 weeks ago, changed universities. So I'm not fully up to date on exactly what the University of York was doing, but I did have many conversations with Alison Shedlock at the University of Manchester, and she's doing a lot of great stuff on changing the amount of meat in different meals, so it's not specifically the planetary health one, but she's very aware of the issues and trying to do a lot of things kind of about placement and about things sort of more behind the scenes at the moment, but there's a lot of work going on. Any ideas for getting more institutions on board? I mean, I think there is a question about procurement and whether there should be some policies around public sector procurement. So this is something that could be done at a sort of a local area authority level, or it could be done at a national level. But I think that this is something that we need to push for policy change across the board. And the more institutions that are already doing it, the better, to demonstrate feasibility, of course.
Nice. Are there any more questions, or should we move on to Matt from My Emissions? All right, I think we'll move on, but if you do have any questions directed at Sarah, please do put them in the chat or just email us and we'll try and get them to her at some point, and we will put in 5 minutes at the end if anything does pop up. But yeah, thank you, Sarah. It was so interesting to just look at the slides, and it's always good to put our eating habits into perspective. Definitely I'm thinking about the latte now and my need for excessive milk, but that's fine. Right now we're going to transition to Matthew Isaacs, who has been a great help to us. He's the person who's done a lot of the carbon footprinting in our recipe book, and he's just going to give us a brief talk on what he does exactly, the process that comes into it, and the importance of carbon food tracking. So Matt, would you just like to introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit more about My Emissions and how accessible the tool is to students or anyone in the community in general?
Thanks very much, Julian, and likewise, like what Sarah said, it's really nice to be here. And first thing first, it's just amazing to hear Sarah speaking about carbon footprinting. Has obviously been working on this a lot longer than we have, and to answer how and why we're doing what we're doing, it's because people like Sarah and other academics have been talking about this for 10, 15, 20 years, and really created so much noise about it and built up so much research that there's now a whole base of values and data and research out there that people like us and students like yourselves can all go out and find and use it to make more sustainable choices. So that's really great to hear about and to be here to listen along with all you guys. As Julian says, what we do and what we've been doing is helping the Nutrition Revolution team score the carbon footprint for all of their recipes in your new meal book. And that's something as a company what we do. We help brands, products, restaurants, caterers to complete this analysis and then really to be able to display and communicate those results. And what we're trying to do, and we're hoping that the Nutrition Revolution team are trying to do as well, is make all of this data and make all of this information as accessible as it can be. As all of you've just seen, it's not a simple thing to understand what your impact is. There's so many different factors and so many different ingredients to think about, and very much what we believe is there's no need to worry about every single meal or being like worried about every single ingredient all of the time. it doesn't matter if you have a high carbon meal or a low carbon meal every now and then. What's important is just being mindful of it. And over time, you'll learn something new about your latte being really bad for the environment, or something in between, or trying to reduce how much milk you have on your cereal. Like every day, even now today, we learn new things and new ways that we can try and cut our own impacts down. And it's not something that can just happen instantly and overnight, but over the time, the more times you think about this, you score it, you look into the impact of your meals. Over time, you'll pick up an understanding in the same way that we have over 15, 20, 25 years with nutrition labels. I think our calculator has been shared by Julian, so thanks very much for that. But that's a free calculator we put up, so you can put in your meal, you can put in a recipe, you can put in the food you've eaten on a given day, and you'll get to see the impact and the carbon footprint of that meal based on global and general research. It's obviously not 100% specific. It will depend on exactly what food you've purchased, how local it was, seasonal, where it was grown. So there are other factors and there's a variance, but at least it gives an indication of what your meal will look like. And also alongside it, and alongside most of our labels at the moment, you'll see metrics like whether it's a low, medium and high. We're actually transitioning as well to an A2E rating, very low, and traffic-like equivalent system. And that's something I suspect we're going to see a lot more on your food products and a lot more on your meals. I don't know if you picked up in the news, but I believe in Scotland, Lidl is about to start piloting an eco score. So it's something that you guys in particular will be seeing in the Lidls near you. I don't work for Lidls in any way, and I'm not involved in that in any way, but something for you to look out for. And it's actually a really exciting time with more and more initiatives and programs starting up, which is looking to do exactly this, so that we can all make more sustainable choices. And also, as you've hopefully seen on the labels, if you've had a look at them, we do benchmark our results based on a fair daily food emissions value, which again is based on global averages, and it's based on looking at what the emissions are per capita based on a slightly more limited area of the supply chain, because we just focus on farming, processing, packaging and transport at the moment as our main system boundaries. And it creates like in a very similar way to what you've already seen, a quota, a reference intake, which we try and suggest people try and stick to. It helps to give a little bit of context. Again, there's more information in the science of that and on our website, and it helps everyone to hopefully understand whether those meals are low, medium and high, good or bad for the environment. All I'd say is just the best thing that everyone and individuals you can do is, again, just being mindful of your carbon footprint from food, just starting to look into it, use our calculator, all of the resources that Sarah shared earlier, talk about it with your friends. I completely agree that, and it's one of the reasons we started looking into food emissions. It's probably as individuals, it's the biggest impact I think that you can have today on the environment. It's very hard for us to influence how much is being invested in fossil fuels, but it's very easy to decide how much beef or meat that we're going to eat, or if we are going to eat it, whether we'll have it imported or whether we'll go for locally grown and seasonal veg, seasonal ingredients. Those are factors that are all in our control, and the more we can do it, the more that will be passed down the supply chain, and we can create a more sustainable food system. I think that's probably enough from me. And yeah, you can always reach out to us through our website, LinkedIn, whatever. I'm sure you'll find me, and I'm always happy to speak with anyone and answer any questions you guys have. But I hope you enjoy the labels. I hope you enjoy what the Nutrition Revolution team are doing, and we're really happy to be involved in supporting you guys.
Thanks so much, Matt. Yeah, you guys have done some amazing work for us, so we're very, very grateful to have you on board. So I think just now we're going to transition on to the cook along event. So I'm going to welcome Kirsty Hay from Edinburgh Food Social, who is our wonderful chef for tonight and going to be leading us along with the turmeric chickpea stew. So Kirsty, where are you on my screen? I think she's there. Yes, fantastic. Do you want to give a quick introduction about who you are to the students?
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Kirsty. I work at Edinburgh Food Social. So we're an organisation that's all about, in many ways, Scotland has so much great produce, but not enough people eat it. So that's one of the things we're looking at, trying to make the food in Scotland more accessible to people in Scotland, and doing community food free meals for people that otherwise would go without and are suffering through food poverty, and food education, teaching projects and classes in schools. And then we're a social enterprise, so we fund all that through doing other things like selling gins and catering people's weddings and things. So we kind of do a mix of everything, but yeah, we really passionately believe in local seasonal produce. So we're very on board with people trying to get cooking and get cooking sustainably. So yeah, we're very excited to be here. Delighted, looking forward to hosting this cook along, and then even more looking forward to eating my delicious food.
Well, thank you so much, Kirsty. We're super excited to start. I'm just going to introduce our kind of senior university staff who are joining us and will be filmed doing the cook along. There'll be a bit of dialogue with them as well. So first of all, we have Leslie Crichton from Dundee. So Leslie is a consultant in anaesthesia and critical care based in Tayside in Scotland. She's got various leadership roles as the Global Citizenship Lead for Tayside, lead for the Scottish Graduate Entry Medicine course. So in amongst a pandemic and all of these leadership roles, I am amazed that she has been such a big part of this project and really pivotal in bringing it all together. So thank you so much, Leslie, for joining. Liz Grant, Professor Liz Grant from Edinburgh is also joining us. I should also mention Liz is my mum, but she's a director of the Global Health Academy at Edinburgh, an assistant principal of Global Health, and has also been so supportive of this as we've gone along the 9 months. Yeah, big advocate for planetary health. So we're very, very happy to have you here. I'm going to hand over to Lindsay and Jeff, so they are actually in the same room, but Lindsay has really helped bring this project together from the Edinburgh side. She's got a background in nutrition and epidemiology, having worked at Harvard, but is now one of the Future Leaders Fellows at Edinburgh and a Chancellor's Fellow in Global Challenges. And she is with Jeff Sim, who we are also very grateful to have along tonight. A lot of you might know Jeff as well. He's director of the Global Academy of Agriculture and Food Security and the chair of the Global Agriculture Society Edinburgh. So absolute experts in their fields. We're very, very grateful to have you and to find out a little bit more about you as well tonight. So without further ado, I'll hand over to you, Kirsty.
Hello, okay. Well, we're going to be making our chickpea and turmeric stew. So hopefully is everybody got the things that they need in front of them for everyone's cooking along? Good, okay. So we're gonna get started and then we're gonna ask some questions and see how things are going. But obviously the recipe has some of the stuff kind of pre-prepared, but I'm assuming that everyone hasn't pre-prepared all the bits. So we're gonna chat through things a little bit. So step one that we're going to be doing is cooking our brown rice. So we want to get that on and then we'll chat a bit about it because brown rice takes longer than white rice does. So what you want to do with your brown rice first is you want to wash it. So we wash the rice because that gets rid of some of the extra starch that's on it, and it means we won't hopefully end up with a gloopy rice that isn't so tasty. So get your pan of rice and run it under cold water. We want the water cold so it doesn't start to cook it. Drain it off, and then we're going to get our rice into some boiling water. Now, you don't actually have to just use water. People love making rice with water, but you could do all sorts of things. You can add I'm going to cook mine in stock. If we weren't doing a turmeric stew, adding turmeric to your rice would give it an amazing yellow colour. And there's all sorts of different things you can do. But yeah, I'm going to give my rice a quick wash. Hopefully everyone else will do the same if you've not already cooked your rice, and get it in the pan. So who can tell me what's the difference between white rice and brown rice? Put it in the chat or shout out if you're one of our lovely professors.
So we've got less processing. That's one of the comments.
That is definitely true. Husk on, you have nailed it. Yeah, so brown rice is just white rice with its husk still on. So that means it's actually much healthier for you because it's got more fibre and just more goodness. And yeah, it's better for the environment because they've faffed around with it less. But it does mean it takes slightly longer to cook because it's got that extra layer. Brown tastier also, yeah, it's good. It's so funny that white rice is like the common rice. You know, so many people I know have just never bought or cooked with brown rice. Liz, I can see smiling away. That's making me very happy. Right, how are you doing, Liz? Is your rice on? Are you cooking?
Well, I'm just getting it rinsed at the minute. I do have to say I have an assistant on the go here. Tina's dad is washing the rice for me, so it's just about to go on washing in cold water, and then the kettle's just boiled, so it's going to be put on for the boil. Thank you.
Amazing. We love a bit of delegation. That's, you know, just a good way to.
That's what cooking's all about. A bit of delegation at the side. You know, so we've just got the boiling water coming up now, and we'll get that done. But you're right that brown rice is so much nicer, isn't it? It's got this wonderful texture, and allows us to vote. One question on this: do you put salt in your brown rice?
Oh, that's a good question. That is. So in general, I would say that you should season everything, and you want to season as you go along. So if you make a meal and you don't season it and then just add it at the end, it'll taste very differently than if you season it as you cook. So if you add little bits of seasoning to every bit you do, and when I say little, we're not trying to overdose on salt here, we're adding a little bit every time, that then builds it into the flavour of what we're doing in a much more interesting way. So yeah, get a little bit of salt in that water, and that will help make it really tasty. And yeah, as I say, like, depending on what you're making, you can add all sorts of other things. You know, you could add cloves and star anise and all sorts of interesting different spices, cinnamon, into your rice. And if you add cardamom, all these things, it'll take on the flavour. So you don't have to think of rice as some kind of boring side thing, which I think a lot of people do. Oh, I see Leslie's got some special guests in her kitchen. Oh.
Yeah, I've got helpers, and also helpers' friends have just arrived, so it's going to be even more chaotic than I thought it was going to be. But the one that you can see at the moment, this one is my least enthusiastic eater. So I'm hoping that by cooking this with him helping today, that it's going to convince him to try something that isn't pizza and simple carbs.
I'll never do that one. I'm evil.
Oh, we're getting some great health advice also popping up in this chat about brown rice having a lower GI, so it doesn't affect so much of the blood sugar. So yeah, all the benefits of brown rice. Right, we're going to crack on to start making our actual stew now. And my cooker is just kind of spitting at me a little bit, so sorry if that's what we can hear. So we're going to get our coconut oil. So we want to get some coconut oil into our pan. Now, there's lots of different, in the recipe, it's got coconut oil and groundnut oil. And there's obviously so many different oils you can use. They all have a slightly different flavour, slightly different taste. But the other thing that lots of different oils have is a different smoke point. So that's one of the things that you have to think about. That's basically, I mean, it's kind of as simple as it says on the tin, at which point your oil starts really smoking and stops being good for cooking and instead starts to burn. So like coconut oil's got a slightly lower smoke point than kind of vegetable oil, but much higher than butter, for example. So quite good for cooking in. and it's also going to give us some nice flavour. So we want to get our oil in the pan, and then we're going to add our spring onions, our garlic, and our coriander stalks. So you can actually, has anyone ever tried with your spring onions? You can put them in water or put them in a pot and then regrow them. Has anyone ever tried to do that? It's quite a fun thing to do if you get your spring onions. They've already got little roots. We did actually, being Scottish and hating food waste, tried deep fat frying the roots one time to see if we could make a really good crispy snack. It had mixed reviews in the kitchen, I'm gonna confess. Some people loved it, some people were very confused by it. So I don't think it's necessarily onto a big winner yet, that one, but you know, it's important to experiment with your food waste and see what you're going. So you're going to take your spring onions. We don't eat the very end bits unless you desperately want to try deep fat frying them. But there's a common misconception that you can't eat the green bit on the top. I see loads of people just chop off the green bit and throw it out. The green bit is totally edible. It tastes good. It's fine. You can definitely eat that. So I'm definitely going to be putting it in mine, and I'm going to advise that you're putting it in yours. So when we chop, I'm going to go down so you can see my chopping board. What we talk about when you want to chop is you want to do what we call like a rolling chop. So that means this part of your knife, the end of your knife, doesn't move from the chopping board. So your knife is kind of going up and down, it's rolling. You're not picking it up each time. And that makes it much nicer on your hand and wrist if you do a lot of chopping. And then you want to be doing what we call the claw. So you want to have your other hand that's holding your vegetables like a little claw. So your fingernails are down. So that essentially what's happening is your fingernails are like parallel to your knife. So if your knife was to slip, all that's going to happen is it's going to go down your fingernails and it's not going to chop your fingers. So some good top tip chopping advice there. So we just want to chop through our spring onions. Just hopefully everybody can get doing that, and then we're going to put them into our oil and start then cooking it. So, right, who have we not heard from a while? Jeff, how's it going in your kitchen?
Really well here. I have to say I wasn't aware we were allowed extra staff, so I've had to recruit my daughter Alison here, and I hadn't heard the tip about the holding vegetables the proper way, so bits of my finger are probably already making their way.
Well, there's probably some level of nutrition in a finger. I don't really know.
And I have a confession to make. I cooked the rice in a rice cooker before, because when I was a student about 600 years ago, one of my best mates was from Malaysia, and she carried around the world, because they weren't very common in this part of the world at that stage, a rice cooker. We got one when we got married 25 years ago as a wedding present, and it just gave up the ghost last year. The first thing we did was go out and buy a new one because we loved it so much. They're fantastic for making sure you get good rice every time, and it takes the pressure off should you be involved in a cook-off.
Or it puts the pressure on.
Yeah. You
You
should
can
deduct
focus
points
on-
for that, though, it's cheating.
You don't have a speaking rule.
Well, I do have a
You manage to
Well, I have to say, I'm quite jealous of your rice cooker. I've never actually had it or used a rice cooker. So one day that can be what we aspire to have.
Alison got one recently on a student budget. So we got an all singing, all dancing one that brings you a cup of tea in the morning as well. But you can get them very reasonably priced, and they are brilliant, I have to say. I'm not sponsored by any rice
Sponsored
cookers
by rice cooker.
manufacturers.
I got one for £20. This is good student advice from a student.
Yeah.
Current student, not from like 50 years ago.
Right, so we're just going to keep adding to our pan. So we've hopefully all got our spring onions in our pan and our coriander stalks. We want to get them in. So the reason we want to add the stalks and not the leaves at the moment is the stalks are obviously much sturdier. They'll cook out longer. If we added the leaves, they would just shrivel up, but it would also lose a lot of the flavour from them. but also coriander leaves are pretty, right? We want to end up with a dish that's beautiful. So we also want some of these go on top of our dish at the end to make it look beautiful. It's also, I think, always a really nice thing to have some of the ingredients from your dish going on top of it, so somebody can look at it and be like, ah, I know what's in that. So yeah, we want to do our garlic. So lots of people these days like to buy these jars of minced garlic, but we're going to use some good old proper garlic that you grow in your cupboard. A lot of the minced ones you buy actually have all sorts of other things in them and not so much garlic. But they obviously do help you out for being quick. And look at this delegation, Liz. I'm so impressed.
I hope you are. And you just missed the garlic getting, hammered with the back of the knife, which is the way to crush the garlic. But if you don't have a garlic crusher, then the back of the knife is what to do with the chopping board.
There, I hope everyone is watching Liz's screen right now, because that is the exact demo of what you need to do.
Yeah.
Back of the knife, take it out of its skin, chop along. Amazing.
And the other,
Let me check how many helpers Liz Grant has got there. I can see more and more people moving in. Is somebody adjudicating?
it's just Angus, but
I like the penny, Jeff.
yeah, that penny is definitely getting you. I think you've won in the cook-off for style. We have lost that. There's two things I was going to say.
Leslie's penny is next level, actually.
Leslie, we need to see this penny that you've got. I've missed it the first time.
Oh yeah,
it's so beautiful, so colourful. Where's yours, Mum?
Thank you. This is my reversible Chitingi penny from Zambia, which I got given a couple of years ago, which I love, but I never actually wear. So it's lovely to have an opportunity to actually put it on. But I wanted to ask Kirsty if she had any top tips about keeping leftover coriander, because what I've done in an effort to try and reduce my food waste is I froze my coriander that I had left over from last week, but I would say that it hasn't kept the best condition. So what I've got now, I don't know if you can see, is a kind of coriander mush, which still smells of coriander, but it doesn't look very pretty. So I don't think I'm going to get the garnish that you were hoping for, Kirsty.
No, but I very much applaud that spirit and not having food waste. So yeah, you definitely can freeze them, and it won't ever be the same. You won't end up with coriander, but it's perfectly good for putting in a curry or something. One of my favourite, so if you've got coriander still in its stalks and you want to preserve it, just put them in a glass of water, and that will keep them fresh much longer, as with any herbs, because it just is allowing them to kind of have life like any flowers or plants. Put your herbs in a cup of water, they'll last much longer. But if you just want to get it used up, then one of my favourite things is called zouk, which is kind of like, think pesto. It's not a pesto, but think pesto. And it's loads and loads of coriander that you blitz up with oil, a little bit of cardamom, a bunch of chili, and some lemon zest. And it makes this like amazing dip that's really good for all sorts of other things. So that is a very good use of leftover coriander as well. Now, so we've got our, we call this like sweating, what we're doing at the moment, where we're cooking down our veg. We're trying not to get colour on it, really. We're just trying to get it nice and cooked. So it's releasing all those flavours and starting to sweeten up. And then it's going to be delicious. So we've had that going hopefully about 5 minutes. Now, I have an absolutely humongous tub of turmeric because we make a lot of curries and do a lot of things. So we want to add about a teaspoon of turmeric. I'm going to do that classic, really annoying chef thing that people do where they say a quantity and then they just like pour in without measuring it at all. But you want about a teaspoon of turmeric, get that into your pan and mixed through everything. So hopefully everyone's doing that, and we want to cook that for a couple of minutes. Now, you quite often always want to cook off your spices for a couple of minutes because it allows the spices to warm up and release that flavour and to kind of toast off. Sometimes they have a kind of like almost bitterness. So we're trying to get rid of that just now by toasting this off, releasing the flavour and watching our food with a wonderful yellow colour that it does with turmeric. You also, we were doing a recipe once where we had to make loads of turmeric dough balls, and I just had yellow hands for days. But you know, that is very good fun too. Now, I want to ask our staff about what's their kind of silliest story they've heard about people and food in university, be that yourself or other people. And I'll start by telling you all mine whilst my turmeric's cooking off. That my brother, he had a friend who I shall not name, who went to university and in first year of university managed to get scurvy. Scurvy, like sailors used to get in the Middle Ages, because all he ate was those boxes of Kraft cheesy pasta every day for every meal, and just had no nutrition and no vitamins in his diet, and literally got hospitalized with scurvy. So we're going to make sure that none of you end up like that. So yeah, I want to hear about other stories and silly things, but then I also want to hear about your favorite meal that you made as a student, or like your favorite food memory from all of those times.
Do you want us just to chat about it?
Yes.
I have to say, one of the memories I have around cooking was in a flat, and we had agreed when I was a student in Edinburgh many years ago as well, and we lived on £10 a week each, and that covered all the food, all the bills, everything. Now, I have to say, this was in the 80s, and to be honest, £10 was probably not enough to live on, but I realized that you could go to the shops and you could pick up ingredients that were nearly at their well, maybe their best and possibly beyond their best, but so, and there was lots of little vegetable shops, so we had a very healthy meal. But one time my flatmate and I were making a pie, and the one bit of information that's really important around leeks is you do need to wash leeks that are bought, fresh, not these very packaged ones that you get now, but with leeks that you are bought often have soil in them. So we had this very nice vegetable pie. We had made the pastry as well, put it in the oven, had guests coming, sat down, and I cut a slice and suddenly thought, I didn't realize that what have we got in this? This is interesting. Leek and I realized it was leek and soil, because my flatmate had went, I just chopped it all up and threw it in. So that was one of our less successful meals. But I think in those student situations, we just scraped a little bit to the side and kept on going. It had been through heat. It was probably fine.
Yeah. Lovely. I like that. I mean, a bit of soil's not going to kill you, but yeah, probably not quite the taste that you were after. Before the next one goes, if everyone wants to grab their lemon, hopefully you've got an unwaxed lemon, because we don't really want to be eating that wax. And then we're going to zest our lemon and add that zest into our pan. And then we're going to add the juice of our lemon. Now, I'm going to show you a trick before we move on, that what you can do, so you can carry on your zesting, but another way that if you want to make fun lemon strips is you get a peeler and you get your lemon and you zigzag your peeler down. Now you zigzag so you get less of the layer underneath. And then you get a kind of strip of lemon like this that then you can chop and you can use to garnish. So you can then get fun lemon slices that you can curl and twist, and sometimes people put them on cocktails and things. You could cook them and candy them, you could tie them, but that gives you fun little lemon strips that you could use to garnish top your soup or do something else. So that's a fun little tip. But yes, right, moving on. Jeff, do you want to tell us about your favourite or worst memory of food things to do with student times?
Memory of food during student times. Favorite or worst during student times?
I think I got interested in food because of the friend I was mentioning before, the Malaysian friend, and I also had a Costa Rican friend, and they used to mock me mercilessly for cooking more or less the same thing all the time. So they got me interested in doing things a bit out of the ordinary. My wife is from New Zealand, but had just done a PhD in Melbourne at a time almost 30 years ago, when a lot of Asian influences were happening in Australian cooking. So when we first met, she sort of introduced me to another layer of interesting things that got me interested in cooking further. Actually, one of my worst memories, there was a student, I was doing applied zoology at the time, sharing a flat with 4 guys who weren't very good at cooking. And one of them had cooked Spanish sausages, in fact, undercooked Spanish sausages, on the day that we had our parasitology lectures about the pork tapeworm. And that was a kind of pivotal moment for me, trying to up my cooking skills and end the team working on that unless we had some minimum standards imposed of food hygiene.
Amazing. I love it. That is excellent. Okay, we're going to chuck in our chickpeas into our, so again, mine came from a huge can, so I've got mine in a mug. So we're going to add our chickpeas. We're going to toss them around, get them really nicely coated. They've gone nice and yellow.
And Kirsty, are you draining your chickpeas?
Good question. Yes. So these chickpeas are all drained. You can, in an effort to reduce food waste, keep your chickpea liquid, and they actually make vegan meringues. So if you take your liquid from your chickpeas and whip it up, oh, someone else is on the comments, they're already on this one. You can whip it up with some sugar, and then you get a vegan meringue, which is very exciting. Yeah, or you can use it if you make things like hummus. Instead of adding gallons and gallons of oil and it being really unhealthy and not so sustainable, add your water from your chickpeas. There's all sorts of things, but yes, in this recipe we don't need it, but doesn't mean you have to get rid of it. So yeah, drain them out, get them in, get them all tossed. So you should have them kind of, they're all nice, and I mean, they were already yellow, but they're much more yellow now in our pan.
Can I just ask, you added the lemon before the chickpeas? Because I've got the recipe open and I was kind of half going between the screen and you. Is that the best way to do it, the lemon before the chickpeas?
It doesn't necessarily matter. So they kind of all want to go in at roughly the same time.
Okay.
So I added the lemon slightly before because I just wanted to cook it out a tiny bit. And then, yeah, we're adding our chickpeas, and then we've got stock. So, I mean, you could really use any stock. This recipe's got vegetable stock. I mean, does anyone else want to tell everyone how you make stock? See if someone's, it is a great way of heating up food. Let me see, I can see some people typing away. So I know there's some people that are got the answer. Scraps, exactly, yeah. Perfect. So with your like onion peels, your carrot ends, all your kind of vegetable scraps, you put them in a pan, cover them with water, and cook them, and then you get some delicious vegetable stock. And then yeah, you strain it out. Well done. So that makes your stock, and you can freeze stock, so it freezes really well, keeps for ages. So yeah. We've got our stock and our chickpeas, everything in the pan, and we want to leave that to simmer for about 20 minutes. We want to get it to the stage that it boils over. So turn up your heat a little bit, get it to boil. Oh wait, I've forgotten to add a key ingredient, getting carried away with all my chatting. So we also need to add our coconut milk. So again, mine came from a big container, so it's in a mug. If you open a tin of coconut milk, you'll realise that it kind of separates into 2 slightly different sections. One which is basically coconut cream, and one which is far more like coconut water. Now the coconut cream, if you kind of keep it solid, is also really good for baking and all sorts of other things. You can whip it up and use it as a kind of vegan alternative to cream or icing cakes, or doing all sorts of things. But we are adding all of it because we want that delicious creamy coconutness. And so yeah, we should have our stock, our coconut cream, our turmeric, our lemon, and our original things. our original spring onions and things all in our pan cooking that we're bringing up to a boil, and then we're going to leave it to simmer. Now, hopefully your rice is also okay. Don't forget you've got that on a hob as well. So just make sure you haven't run out of water at the bottom of your rice, but that should be cooking away just fine. Grand. So I went to university in Edinburgh. I lived in Kincaid's Hall down at the Cowgate, and one of my flatmates was a vegetarian, and I have to say that's the first time I'd ever really properly come across vegetarianism. Nobody in my family was vegetarian, and it was also the first time I discovered hummus. Turns out everyone at Edinburgh University was just obsessed with eating hummus all the time, whereas I had never had it in my family. So that was very funny. But yeah, it was a real kind of eye-opener to me, because even though my family loved to cook and loved to do food, we'd never really done vegetarian food as a thing, or we had, but it had never been thought of as vegetarian food. And it was like every Sunday we had a Sunday roast and this sort of thing. And living with a vegetarian and think about vegetarian, like I say to people that I feel like everyone should try and be a vegetarian for at least some point of their life, because I think it makes you a much better cook. You just have to become more creative and interesting. The classic kind of British thing is to just do meat and 2 veg, and everyone just centres all of their thinking of food around meat and what they're going to do with meat on the plate. Whereas if you take that out, you have to be a bit more creative. One, to make sure you get the nutrition and everything you need, which is very easy to do without the meat, but also to ensure that you still end up with something that's delicious. And I think herbs are something that's really underused in this country. So on that note, I want to know what everyone's favourite herb is.
I'll go. One of my favourite holidays was pre-children, walking in Corsica with friends and camping. We did a route called, sorry Laura, a route called the GR20, which goes across all the mountains in Corsica, and all of the GR20 has thyme growing along the path. So the smell of thyme brings me right back to that place that I went pre-children. And we're planning our next visit for 2029, which I reckon is the year when the littlest one can be left on his own and we can disappear for a couple of weeks.
Nice. So thyme, yeah, thyme is and thyme is a really easy one to grow. So you can get a pot, grow that yourself in your student flat, put it on the windowsill. I see we've got some smoked paprika, some coriander or rosemary. Basil, coriander, too difficult to choose. It is hard to choose these things, isn't it? I've also just noticed from Susan this wonderful story about the worst student experience was accidentally putting habanero paste on a pizza instead of jalapenos. Hot, hot, hot. Yeah, that sounds like that was quite stressful. Yeah. All right, Liz, what's then your favourite herb?
I think it actually probably is mint. I love mint, and I love fresh coriander. You know, we used to live in Kenya when Rebecca and Katrina were small for about nearly 5 years, and in the garden outside the house there were just so many herbs. They would just grow so easily, and so we always had fresh coriander and parsley and rosemary, a huge bush of rosemary. So I love herbs that are growing fresh, and I have mint is very easy to grow, I realized, and you can get cuttings and put them in a glass of water, and then the roots will come after a little while, and then you can just get it planted out. So I've got in fact I've got mint in some of my big plants. I've intentionally sort of put a little bit of mint in, and they're growing at the base of some of the big plants. I don't know whether you'll be able to see this, but I don't know whether you can. This is a visual of my my plant that's got mint in it and thyme in it, and this is the plant here, though. It's a very big sort of palm tree type thing, but at the base there's lots of there's some fresh herbs. It's so easy to grow herbs.
Yeah, I'm a big advocate for everybody growing their own herbs, because herbs are actually whilst I say we all need to use more herbs, and in bags of salad are actually some of the most wasted things from the supermarket. People buy these bags of salad, and then they use a couple and then throw away the rest, which is tragic. And like I was talking earlier about Zouk with coriander, blending up your herbs, putting oil on them will always make them last longer. There's always things that you can do, putting them in water, freezing them. There's no reason why your beautiful, delicious herbs should go to waste. Right, so hopefully everybody's stew is boiling away on its way. Mine has definitely been boiling away for a while now, so hopefully that's happening. Oh, we've got some more good food stories here. Me and my flatmate in first year tried to make crisps in the oven. Turns out thinly sliced potatoes and lots of oil equals fire. Oh no. That means you were those people that set off the fire alarm in halls, wasn't it? You know, everybody had to go outside and deal with it. As long as you didn't do it in the middle of the night, that was always the worst. You can grow salad leaves easily in container and cut what you need for a meal. Yep, that's so true. Very good. Oh, there's all sorts of great things. Oh, here we go. Consuming herbs may help to prevent and manage heart disease, cancer, and diabetes. It may also help reduce blood clots and provide anti-inflammatory and anti-tumor properties. As if there weren't enough reasons, that's plenty right there. So thank you very much for that, Rita. Okay, so this is good. We're getting now to the stage where we're going to add all of our herbs to this soon. So we want to prep them first. So we're just going to talk about it. I'm sure everybody knows this, but we're just going to talk about it really quickly anyway. So mint comes on a stalk. The stalk is edible. It just doesn't have quite the same flavor or texture or anything. So we're not going to put it in this. So the easiest thing is just to kind of hold it by the top and just trim down, and your leaves come off. But what you can do with your stalk that's not getting this recipe is just put it in your glass of water and then get some nice minty water if you're not going to do anything else with it. So that's how we're going to get our mint leaves off. Now our basil, we want to just pair up, or you can do what we call chiffonade. You can chiffonade our basil, where you take the leaves. So let me just pull off some leaves. And then we make a kind of pile of them. So you get the biggest one and you put the next one on it, and then you put the next one on it. So you've got a pile of basil. And then we roll it up like you're going to roll up like a little cigar sort of thing, until we've got a tube of all of our basil leaves together. And then we're just going to chop them and just run our knife through. Now, the reason that we do this with basil, and they say that you should rip it and not chop it loads, is because if you chop your basil too much, it really ruins and changes the flavor. So your basil becomes really bruised, you lose lots of the oils, and it goes black. And we want nice, beautiful basil. So we need to also, basil is one of those few herbs that you should not keep in the fridge, because again, it will go black if you keep it in the fridge. So if you've got spare basil, leave it out of the fridge somewhere cool. But yeah, once you slice through your kind of log of basil, it's the kind of quickest way to get all your like thin strips, which are going to be very helpful for us. And then coriander. So we want to pick through. I was talking about how pretty the leaves are, and that's a really nice way to make our thing. If you want to find some nice leaves, you can choose really big ones, you can choose really small ones. I quite often, so they come in like heads of 3, quite often really even take those apart, so it's just the little individual little groups. So you want to choose some that you're going to use to garnish the top of your plate, and then you want to, the rest, just kind of chop through them. We're not using it in this recipe, but parsley is one of those herbs that you can just chop to dust, basically, and it doesn't affect the flavour or change it at all. In fact, when I trained at cookery school, they used to make us do that on repeat, chop our parsley. So it's so small you can barely see it, so you had beautiful, just like green dust put across your meal. Now, I'm not asking anyone to do that, don't worry. Right, so I think I still have someone still hasn't told me their favourite herb, at least. So
favorite herb.
I like mint. I like basil. I like them together in pesto. So in fact, my contribution for the Planetary Health Meal will be one of my favourite meals, which is halloumi cavolo nero or other cabbage, pine nuts, and homemade pesto, which is delicious.
That sounds great. I'm on board with that. I don't think I've ever actually put cavolo nero in that, so I'm gonna have to give that a try. Oh, Rita is firing through with all this health information. If anyone's not got their chat, they should have a look at that. And you've got a basically full health and nutrition course going on alongside this from Rita. So this is amazing. Hopefully, I don't know if maybe we can put some of this all into an I don't know, I feel like we need to capture this somehow. So everyone can make sure they remember all these exciting things. Oh, oregano. Yeah, that's true. Nobody had mentioned oregano yet, so I've just seen a shout out for that. So I love spices as well as herbs, but we can grow herbs much more easily than we can spices in this country. So that's why I think we need to try and embrace herbs as much as possible. And they're so underused. So we want to, get them going. Right, we need to get our onions cooking alongside this. So I have to confess that I actually somehow could not get my hands on a shallot. They're usually very easy to get, but I could not. So I have an onion instead, but hopefully everyone else has a shallot. A shallot is basically just a slightly sweeter onion, and so yours will just be slightly tastier than mine, but both will work totally fine. So I'm going to show you how to chop. It works the same way with an onion and a shallot. So you want to cut it in half. Imagine it is a shallot, as I say, it works the same way. And you want to keep the root on the end, so that just kind of holds it all together for when you're chopping. And then you want to slice across into lots of long lines. So if you can see, I'll go down with my knife and my thing. So our onion, we're slicing along from the end to the root, and then we've got all these. So that means when we chop along, we get lots of nice dice ready to go. And you can, then you'll end up with just like the very end of the root that we don't need to keep that bit. You can also roast shallots whole, which is a delicious other kind of way to do this. So once we've got our shallots nice and cooked, nice and chopped, we need to get some oil on the go to cook them in. So we're basically trying to make some kind of crispy shallots at the moment, because we love adding a bit of texture and interesting things to meals. So we want to think about the different kind of concepts of flavour when we cook. We want to think about the different ways that it looks, because we eat with our eyes, but we also really want to think about texture. So you want to add as many different kind of textures as you can to make your meal really interesting. When I say as many, not literally as many as you can add, but you want a variety of textures, let's put it that way. So yeah, we're going to have our nice stew with our chickpeas and our rice, but then this is going to give us some crisp to go on top. So we want to get our oil hot, and whilst our oil is getting hot, I want to hear how we're all doing in the kitchen. I've not asked about the food in a while. Everybody's food coming along fine? Are we going to end up with some delicious stew?
Kirsty?
Yes.
How many shallots are we doing?
Oh, how many? That is a good, I'm pretty sure it is one, but let me just double check. Yes, one shallot. Yes.
One shallot. All right, I'll stop peeling shallots then.
I mean, if you love shallot, then you have lots. You know, you can have as many crispy shallots in your bowl as you like. But yeah.
Kirsty, I'm going to make use of some red onions because they're going a bit soft. So I'm just going to use half a red onion. So it's going to be a bit different, but it's okay.
That's definitely okay. We love something. That's great.
I'd love to have used shallots because they're really lovely and sweet and give a different flavour, but I do find them fiddly to cut, so it's good to get your tips. So I'm off to do my onion now.
Yeah. Another really good thing that you can do with red onions in particular that would actually be quite nice for the top of this dish. So acidity in food is really important, and again, I think quite often an underused thing. But you can really kind of do a sort of, not even quite a pickle, but if you slice your red onion into thin strips and cover it with lemon juice and leave it for about 5 minutes, it takes the kind of strong flavour out of the red onion and almost kind of pickles it. So that's a really fun sort of garnish and interesting like flavour concept that also looks beautiful because it like spreads out the pinkness from the red onion. So on top of this dish, that would probably be really nice, but it's also good with all sorts of different things. So that's a wee extra tip about red onions in there. Yeah. Okay, is everyone else doing okay? Does anyone else have any questions?
No, it's coming on really nicely.
Yeah. Oh, someone's done a shout out for, oh, Trina's done a shout out for dill. Yeah, we hadn't even discussed dill. Dill is a great herb, all sorts of things that can actually. One of my, I've been making quite a lot of recently for, I did a wedding at the weekend. It's a green ginger lemonade, which has got kind of dill and mint in the lemonade. And oh, that's delicious. I'm a big fan of that. Now I really want a glass of that. That's the trouble with working in food. You always make yourself hungry thinking about all the things you have to do. Right, well, my rice is just about cooked, and my stew is, I think, just about cooked. My oil is hot, though, so now I'm going to chuck my onions, in your case, your shallots, into the hot oil, and that is going to be amazing. Getting them, it should be bubbling away. If you add it when it's cold, it will also work, and you can get them that way, but they will absorb more of the fat, so it'll be slightly more unhealthy. So the different thing, if we add them in hot, they won't absorb as much of it. And oh, you want me to drop the recipe for the lemonade? All right, I think I can do that for you all. That's after this, I'll send it. It's a good fun one, that. Grand. Okay, so has everyone got their onions frying? Yeah.
Yes, they're looking well. They're smelling lovely. It's just such a wonderful smell when you cook shallots and onions.
Yeah. And if you want to add a wee tiny bit of salt, that'll make it a bit nicer. So a little pinch of salt will go a long way on them.
Pinch of salt.
There's some amazing salts that you can get in Scotland. The Isle of Skye sea salt is one of the ones that I think is utterly delicious, and with its big salt crystals and goodness. So I'm just going to have a wee shout out for them. I love using all of our Scottish produce. It's something, as I say, we don't quite use enough often in this country, and it's surprisingly difficult to get your hands on the things that are grown. And here, you know, and Scotland has amazing seafood, but actually most people in Scotland, you know, don't eat that. And there's lots of game in Scotland that gets shot every year for fun, but then it isn't eaten. And so there's, you know, there's all sorts of things about our food system that we have to be thinking about and engaging with and what we're doing. Right, so we're going to go back to our stew, and we're going to add in most of those herbs. Think about which ones you might want to keep to maybe garnish the top of your bowl. But we're going to add in basically all of our herbs to our stew now. The reason we're adding herbs in at the end is to kind of keep their flavour, keep their colour.
I haven't done anything with greens yet that I've seen, or I haven't been fully paying attention. But
sorry, I can't quite hear you. Can you say that a tiny bit louder?
Oh, never mind. we were wondering if we were falling behind with our leafy greens, but I think we're on track.
You're on track. Okay, good. If I am going far too fast, somebody just shout. Hopefully not, but we'll see. So yeah, I'm chucking in all my herbs. My onions are cooking. My rice is looking good. I'm sure all yours is looking wonderful as well. Now, one of the things that I think is interesting that people often think about is when you're trying to have a diet that has a smaller carbon footprint, quite often people think that means that you can't have any cultural diversity in a diet. And I think that's not true at all. You just have to be a bit more interesting and kind of creative to think about it. So like, you know, with things like Mexican food, instead of the like traditional pickles, you can pickle things that we have here, like pickling radish. And they become top. It's the same sort of crispy goodness. And just thinking about, you know, what beans are you using? What pulses are you using? Ones that we grow here, but you can still do a whole host of interesting things with them and get engaged with so many different things. And so, yeah, it'd be really good to hear from people about kind of what are their favourite kind of good tips or making kind of different, interesting cultural food, but with Scottish produce. And if there's any like thing that they've done in particular that they were like, oh, that was really good, I want to share that with other people, I would love to hear about that now. I love these thinking faces. I love like everyone, like every time I ask a question, like everyone like makes a face and I'm like, oh, this is good.
I know,
Wild
I know.
garlic pesto. Oh,
I
that's a good one.
know. That is, I think, Katrina, I'm sure you've made things that are very locally Scottish.
Well, yeah, I was thinking about the we live like quite close to the Dell in Collington, and there's just so much wild garlic. And I think on a run one day, I just was like running past it, and it was so intense. I was like, I'm just gonna grab a bunch of that and keep going. And then I arrived back to the house and made some wild garlic pesto. It was really good.
Wild garlic, yeah, it is abundant. There's also loads of wild leek, and loads of people actually think what is wild leek is wild garlic, but they're both edible, so it's totally fine. But wild leek has got a much narrower leaf, and wild garlic has a much wider leaf and actually a much stronger smell. And you can use them both in roughly the same ways, but they're both delicious, and they're both free. I'm going to give another shout out for free things, so I'll just grab it from my fridge. This is like a here's one I prepared earlier, although it's accidental, which I've got a big batch here of rosehip syrup, which, you know, you get rose hips, which if your family was like mine, and then when you were a child, they were called itchy bombs, and your brother shoved them down your jacket all of the time to make you itchy. And turns out they can have much nicer purposes than just being itchy bombs, and you can use them to flavour all sorts of things. So that batch of rosehip syrup is actually going to go into some gin that I'm making. But you can do it with all sorts, put it in cakes, make cordials. They're another great free ingredient. We've got some rhubarb crumble. I love a rhubarb crumble. Vegan beetroot Rubens. Oh yeah. Leek and wild garlic risotto. That's a great one. Plum tart. Oh, we're coming into plum season. It's very exciting. I get a veg box from East Coast Organics, and my one last week had the first set of all the plums in it, and it's so exciting. I loved it. Yeah. Right, you can see my onions are starting to get their good colour on them. So we don't want them to burn, but we do want them to go really nice and crispy. So about half of mine have got some good colour. So giving them a bit of a toss, keeping them cooking. Hopefully everyone else's onions are kind of getting crispy and good. Yeah.
Jeff's favorite Scottish produce recipe.
Yeah, I was trying to find it actually because I've forgotten some of the ingredients. But mackerel, we produce some fantastic mackerel, but a lot of it gets exported. But a really nice salad with mackerel, beetroot. What's the grainy thing? It's bigger than tabbouleh, but it's buckwheat, and a great watercress.
Oh yeah.
Very nice salad. Actually, I would like to put in a word for the humble sheep and cow as well, because we produce a lot of grass in Scotland, and I think that although undoubtedly ruminants have a higher carbon footprint, managed well, they can be very helpful for biodiversity and some of our iconic local species. So I think it's a question of balance, and actually having some seasonal lamb at this time of year and some beef in there, as long as it's grass-fed, high welfare, and not competing for some of the land we need for growing food directly for humans, in my that's all part of the equation. It's just a question of balance. I've lost one helper, but another actually. This one's in charge of floor control. Cleaning up on the floor, things that look wrong.
Whilst we're talking about meat, I'm going to give a little shout out to Peedlam Farm, because they treat their animals pretty much as well as you can. And Denise there is wonderful, and they donated an awful lot of things to us over the last year to feed people that otherwise wouldn't have had food. So whilst we are talking about meat, I feel like I should give them a little bit of a shout out, because whilst other people get rid of their waste, they have been donating it. So that's what I suppose we want to see more people doing. Whilst we talk about using waste, Fair Share are another great organisation. We get food from them every week at Edinburgh Food Social, and so do so many organisations all across the UK, where they collect what would otherwise be waste food and going in the bin, which, you know, we need to deal with that. There shouldn't ever be a problem where this situation is created, but that's a bigger thing that needs dealt with. And then it gets given out to charities, organisations, people that wouldn't afford food otherwise, and to cook with and feed people all across the UK, as I say. So there's all sorts of different things ways that people are trying to use food waste in all sorts of different ways and can make sure things don't get wasted. Right, so now I think we're at the time where we need to be dishing up our meal. Is everybody's meal hopefully ready? Yes, do we have some nods? Yeah.
Yeah, it smells fantastic.
Amazing.
I had a secret taste and it tastes really good.
Very important before you dish it up into a bowl and serve it to anyone else. Taste it. You need to have a taste. Make sure it tastes nice before we feed it to anyone. See if it needs a little bit more salt, a little bit more pepper, a little bit more turmeric. If you want to add some chili in now, rather than just using some chili as a garnish, get it in there. I'm going to do a sort of liberal sprinkle of some chili into mine.
We have a code red incident in our household where my daughter has put accidentally some lemon pips into the stew with the chickpeas. So it feels like a bit of a Russian roulette situation now. It's quite hard to spot them. So someone's going to get a lemon pip with their tea.
Well, if a good way to avoid doing that is if you, I'll tell you this now really helpfully afterwards, but if you squeeze your lemons through a sieve, then the sieve catches all the bits and the pips and things, and the lemon juice goes straight through. So, or you've got a juicer as well. So, I don't know, no excuses then. Code red, pips.
Red.
So you want to take your rice and you want to toss it up a little bit just to kind of fluff it through, let out some of that steam. So our rice is hopefully looking real good. And then you want to pick. We've got stew, so I would recommend not serving it on a plate, but you know, you do you. I would recommend, though, it'll be much easier, something with curved edges. You could do a big low one or a tall one. And then what we want to do is we want to get our rice, our stew, and our garnishes, so the bits across the top to make it look nice, but also taste nice in our bowl. But I'm going to put my rice first, because I want to make sure I know how much rice is going in my portion. So I'm going to put all my rice to one side of my plate, well, my bowl. So I'm kind of making a little pile with my rice on one side, and you do it however you like, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing how you do yours. So I've made a sort of little.
Can I throw a wee spanner in the works here? And so for those who are for the senior staff that are cooking, if you can plate up in true MasterChef style, and we'll be judging who's got the best presentation skills, okay?
So yeah, you guys don't have to listen to me. I mean, nobody has to listen to me. I'm just telling you what I'm doing. And then I'm going to take my stew, and in theory, I'm scooping it really nicely, but I'm just going to pour it. But in theory, scooping it very nicely into my bowl. And you want to make sure you don't just get the topping, that you get some of the chickpeas as well. So I'm putting it on the side next to my rice, so that when you look down at your bowl, you can see rice and stew. Now then I want to add my nice colourful and delicious herbs. So I've kept some of my coriander, as I said. So you can put that, I'm going to put it kind of across the middle. A few little pieces of coriander. I'll go down here. And then now I actually, I've got my onions, but then I did a couple of little extra things. Here's what I did earlier to make you think. So I've got some toasted almonds that I just fried off in a pan. So I'm going to put them kind of across, just to add another little bit of crunch. And the other thing I did, just to think about all the different things you can do, is I roasted some chickpeas with some turmeric and some paprika on them. So again, they're crunchy and crispy. Like our onions are adding crunch and crisp, you could do this with chickpeas using the same ingredients. So I'm just tossing some of those across as well. So we want to be thinking, we want our plate to look nice, we want it to broadly show what the dish is, and we want it to tell people roughly what is in it. So I'm ending up with my bowl. Hopefully you can see that. Oh, it's all very much in the shadow. Of my chickpea and turmeric stew, which the wonderful guys have got the recipe for in their recipe book. So thanks very much for giving us this recipe, letting us cook it. And I am really looking forward to seeing what everybody else's plates look like. And if anyone has any other questions, let me know. And I'm sorry this took a little bit longer than I think I was meant to take. I think I probably just got carried away chatting. So thank you very much, everyone, for putting up with me.
All right. We have a very, and some red pepper flakes.
Ooh, Jeff looks fantastic.
Yeah, these are looking amazing.
That looks so good, Jeff. I'm coming over.
I called Uber actually while everybody was cooking.
No, that looks amazing.
I have deviated slightly from the protocol. Some of that was deliberate and some of it not so much. But I have I've garnished with basil because the coriander was mush because of the freezing process. And also instead of rice, I've gone for naan bread because I love a bit of naan bread. And the chili flakes as well.
Nice, looks amazing, well done.
Looks really good. Okay, I don't know whether you can see this. Can you see this one? That's I'm trying to put it upside down. And I oddly have kept to the recipe, which makes a pleasant change. Just adding a little bit of tomato for effect to give the colour. So there we are.
You didn't add any chili?
Yes, sorry. The chili has gone in it as well, and a bit of akabanga chili oil from Rwanda has gone in there as well, just to help it along. But it looks great. But actually, I think in the poll needs to have the chefs, because yours looks absolutely fantastic.
Well, I might have had some practice of cooking over the last while, so I'm at a slight advantage.
But it was great. It was such a lovely thing to do.
Getting some nice compliments there, saying they're all looking so good. I want to. If people have made them at home, then they should post them on social media, so we can all see them. So yeah, that would be. Hopefully Trina or someone can tell you exactly what to tag when I say post them on social media.
Oh, definitely tag them and take a food photo. We'd love to see your entries. You can tag us on our Instagram as well, or our Twitter, either or. I'll pop in our handle in the chat.
I'm really enjoying seeing Jeff doing his multiple plate service. This is making me very happy. You can have a future as a chef yet, lining them all up, doing it bit by bit by bit. That's exactly what you want to see. It's very good. I love it.
It tastes amazing. I love all the lemon.
Oh, it's making me very hungry. I'm sorry I wasn't able to join the cook along.
Very good indeed. And Jeff, yes, we really are impressed.
Well done, everyone, and thank you so much, Kirsty. You did a fantastic job of hosting. We are so grateful for that. I'm just gonna jump in here just with the few students who are left. A couple of people had to leave, and that's totally understandable. Just to say that actually we're launching the plan today, but I know in Dundee we've got food stalls happening throughout the week, so come and grab your free starter pack of ingredients, and we'll be outside the union at the Freshers Fair and things. And we'll also have an event during the month at the community garden in Dundee as well, and we'll be having a closing event at some point, so just watch out for that. Do tag us on social media as well with all your food photos, and I think you'll be in a chance for winning some food hampers as well if you want to do that.
Thanks, Tina. Thanks, everyone. I think we're going to sit down and enjoy this.
Definitely, definitely enjoy.
Bye-bye then.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
much. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy your food. Bye.